Hey, we're live. That was quicker than I thought. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMP podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and today is the first episode in an occasional series where we spotlight Mutants and Masterminds publishers, starting with, hey, there's Jacob Blackman. He's our co-host. He wanted to say hi. And Stephen Trustrum, directly below me in the Brady Bunch grid. He runs Misfit Studios, and he has been putting out Mutants and Masterminds content, I want to say, for seems like longer than a decade at this point, Steve.
Oh, yeah. Way back. I was one of the bigger third-party publishers for second edition before third edition came out. So it's been a long time now.
Back in the day. And I would be a horrible host with terrible manners if I didn't mention our other co-host Walt Rebillard, who is currently out and about walking his dog. How you doing, Walt?
Walking in traffic because Belgian Malinois don't rest.
No, that's true. They're that's the infinite energy supply right there. So thanks for joining, Walt. Appreciate it. And well, hey, why don't we just jump right into some of your releases? Well, first off, let's back up for a second. Why do you dig Mutants and Masterminds as a rule set for supers? Because let's be honest, there's like a million different rule sets for supers these days. What appeals to you about Mutants and Masterminds particularly?
So going all the way back to high school, I played the two big superhero games that I played was Champions, third edition, which was great because you got all the fine detail and the customization. But I also played a lot of the Palladium rules, which was, I've actually done some writing for their Heroes Unlimited setting. But that was only good because you had all these pre-done packages and there wasn't really an ability to customize it that much. Like as soon as you saw somebody roll dice, you could get exactly what level the person was because all the powers were, this amount of dice for that character level. So when first edition of Mutants and Mastermind came along, I was like, well, this is a great push towards what I loved about Champions, but it was still, there's a lot of the fiddly bits just weren't quite there yet. And then I think second edition really knocked it home where you could build just about anything you wanted. So I really started, the first things I started publishing for second edition were actually ideas that came out of my old high school and college era campaigns that I ran. So that was even going back to like stuff that was in Heroes Unlimited and Champions that I was making second edition stuff out of. And then of course, me being me, I like to go, well, this is really great, but there's still some rules that I wish they would do. So that's where Misfit Studios really made its mark with second edition. Mutants and Mastermind was producing additional rules content. And I think we were like much as we are with third edition, we're the premier additional rules content producer. So a lot of other people produce builds, be it creatures or characters or the like, or settings, but we're the guys that have really come out and said, here's new rules, be it the Better Mousetrap, where there's a lot of skills, drilling down into skills, lots of new advantages, new advantage categories that are just for people who have for minions. Also a lot of advice in there. And then of course, meta-human martial arts was just the big juggernaut of new rules, where we basically just said, we're going to take this entirely new approach for how you can, for stuff you can do with the rules. So, and about 75% of that is working with the existing frameworks in Mutants and Mastermind. The other 25%, I would say, was us having to add new layers of stuff just to get the concept to work inside of the game system. And Mutants and Mastermind and Better Mousetrap are consistently our most popular and favorite products. That tells you how old it is. You're trying to bring up the thumbnail, and it goes back to Drive Through and One Bookshelf, RPG Now's original limits for the images. I haven't updated it since. So, but if you go to the third edition version, it's a bigger copy, bigger cover.
Yeah, I hate to think about how long ago second ed was sometimes, because that was some of my first published work was on second ed. But yeah, that was 10, 12 years ago was the shift from second to third. So
yeah, and if you look at some of the fluorescent colors on some of those really poorly done covers, you can tell how long ago it was. If you look at the green and the blue, and unlike Jacob there, who has the benefit of being both an artist and a writer, I'm a writer who sometimes gets by doing graphic design and the like. So it really shows in the early work, and a lot of my latter stuff you can see that I like to say I come a long ways. Like the original Better Mousetrap cover, I did entirely from scratch in Illustrator, I believe. I wanted to make something that looked like a blueprint, and oh boy, howdy, does it look like a blueprint. Just a really, really poorly done one.
Never discount the eye-catching appeal of bright colors. Bright colors are why superheroes and comics sell the way they do, because it catches your eye. It's shiny. You want to know what's going on.
Yeah, but I think those covers were before I understood what a gamut was. So they were like as near to the edge of the gamut as it could get, because they were fluorescent green and fluorescent red and fluorescent blue, and it was just all not good on so many levels.
So we're looking at the third ed Metahuman Martial Arts
Yep.
book here. Is this who's the artist on this?
So, and this is this was done with that cover is done by Eric Lofgren, who does some of the interiors as well. He did this one on spec, and then the good thing was that the interesting thing was that with Better Mousetrap, he was the sole artist on that, and that was a collaborative effort with him and I, where he wasn't just the artist coming in with as a gun for hire. He did all of the artwork. He takes a percentage home of it, and it's the only project I've done like that, and it worked out really well with him because he was also one of the first artists that Misfit Studios worked with, so we'd already had a really good relationship, and because of that, he was willing to take that on, which, as I know from all the other artists I work with, that is a very unusual circumstance. So it was great to have him come on board for that under those conditions.
Well, it's good when you have that trust. I mean, so often that goes badly. So
yeah, and it's made it to the second edition. So he basically, other than doing the new cover, and he did some new illustrations for the interior, and he wanted to recolor some stuff. There was very little work he had to do on the second edition. Most of it was done for the first edition. So that's part of the benefit of it. Is it's something that has the longevity. You get to keep making that money in the new iterations without doing like 90% of the work you did the first time.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's talk about your Halloween release that just came out. This looks like fun.
Yeah, so that's Pumpkin Eater right there.
Mm-hmm.
He is the leader of the Trick or Treat gang, and that's what he does. Is he carves open pumpkins, eats the innards, and then they turn into what's called a pumpkin head, which is a monstrosity where the roots and everything come out as limbs and go around trying to eat people. So and it was an interesting project because I did it so that it could be played seriously. That you can make it as serious as you want it, but even then you could tell that it was largely tongue in cheek because none of the characters can really, it's impossible for them to take themselves seriously.
Oh, that's cool. And you have a book, let me back up 1 second. For anyone who's not watching this on YouTube or Facebook and you're just listening to it on iTunes, the book is Misfits and Menaces, The Trick or Treat Gang. It just came out, I want to say in the last couple of weeks, it seems like.
Yeah, it came out in October.
Okay, cool. Because here we are in November. It still seems like March or April, but it's November. Scrolling back, this is a new book in the Misfits and Menaces line coming out. This is Doom, and I gotta say, is this Lofgren again? Because man, this is a cool cover.
No, that is Scott Harshbarger, who is he's another artist that I had worked with for years. I used to sell stock art for him as well.
Yeah, Scott's legit. I've worked with him on several projects. He's a good guy.
Yeah, so we had this project. And the thing is, I've sat on this cover for a number of years. It's one of those things where I wanted to update it from second to third edition and just hadn't had the time for it. So I finally got it all redone, and it's now about 50% through the editing process. I just put it on hold for a bit because I really wanted to get out a Halloween project in time for the holiday. So this is currently on its way to coming out, so it might be late November, maybe early December, just before Christmas. Hopefully,
okay.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood. So
it's a cool cover. I hesitate to start explaining it, but it kind of looks like demonic samurai, maybe insectoids. Can you give us a little elevator pitch on what's happening here?
All right, so Doom, the premise of Doom is that it's a large secret society, evil organization, kind of what you would expect from, like, say, Hydra or AIM or the like, but it's all supernatural in nature. And what it is it's a group that is formed through the purging of several occult secret societies. They now collectively worship the Lost Ones, which you can put in any of your things like Cthulhu, anything that you want to do in your game, because it's left that open. They're just the big bad that's out there somewhere in the universe. And what you're seeing here are the 4 leaders of a demonic race that Doom has enslaved, and they are actually throughout human history, they've been mistaken for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So what you're seeing there is war in the middle with the sword, and then there's pestilence and death with the scythe and so on, and famine in the background who's a little emaciated. And then the people you're seeing on the ground are actually mystical superheroes that have appeared in other Misfit Studios publications.
And they're having a bad day here.
Yes. So the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse there, they are meant to be incredibly big and bad demons, and you don't see the demon mounts, which are illustrated in the book. So you've got everything you need to run this organization as a recurring enemy in your Mutants Mastermind campaign.
Cool. Sounds good. Hey, Walt, I see you have joined us in video now.
Yes, I'm multifaceted, and going now that I'm not running through traffic with a giant dog. If you scroll through the Banff podcast backlog, you'll actually find the interview we did with Steve talking about metahuman martial arts.
Oh, we're going years back for that, aren't we?
About 3-4 years.
We've been doing this. We have over 430 episodes.
It has been a while. I joined you guys in 2008.
I think we were still the Vigilance Press podcast at that point. So memories, misty color memories.
Yeah, I think I was working on it last time, so that would probably be about 2014. I think 2014, 2015 that came out.
Right on.
We've become so old, guys. How'd that happen?
That was a fun talk.
Yeah, and that the book turned out to be, I want to say like 320 pages. So it was it was a monster.
Well, it's you're really you were really feeling a niche that was kind of needing to be filled there for M&M, because the main rule book, they just kind of do a glancing coverage, of martial arts, and there's so many characters who that's their main shtick. It really needed to be kind of plumbed a little bit deeper. Well,
and it's one of these things where I found that the customers really either really, really love it or they really, really hate it, because unavoidably it does have that an extra layer of complexity. We've got like basic maneuvers, advanced maneuvers, all of which are built as power builds. So they're powers, but they're not powers. And then, I added some things like styles and, the opposite of styles. So you've got things that are hard to learn and difficult to perform, just because I really wanted to make it more than just a way of putting in power builds. I wanted there to be a unique feel to it. And some people really dig it. And some people are just like, oh, why would you do that? Just give me a bunch of advantages and tell me it's Kung Fu.
Well, it's one of those things I struggle with as a publisher is, as I get older, I'm skewing more and more towards rules light stuff when I play it myself. But, there's a core, solid, stalwart part of the audience who loves, the more stimulation side. They want, more crunchy emulation of stuff like martial arts.
Well, and
they want that erector set.
Say what?
Personally,
they want that erector set.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So, because when you're doing it with Mutants and Masterminds, you've already got that inherently in whatever you're doing, right? So I think the way that Green Ronin approached it was that they didn't want to take that an extra step, so they really just say we're going to put these feats, or these originally feats in second edition but advantages now together in these packages that just kind of make sense for the overall concept, which just basically means that anybody who buys advantages could say, I've got Kung Fu or I've got karate, or you can have somebody who doesn't technically is a superhero who doesn't know martial arts, but just happens to have the same advantages as somebody who does have martial arts. So it's kind of like, in effect, as far as the rules go, you are a martial arts master, even though it has nothing to do with your character concept and makes no sense for you. So that was the thing that kind of annoyed me about how it was being done without this. And was really the impetus for me to do a martial arts book.
Cool. Well, hey, we're just about to the end of our time, getting ready to wrap up. You got any closing thoughts, Stephen, Jacob, Walt?
I'm personally a big fan of the metahuman martial arts. I like the idea of like powers and you building powers for super trained talents. I like those abilities. So I'm really a big fan of that book.
Thank you. And one of the things that was the most fun to do in that is when you look in the martial arts styles, is I broke it down into like there's almost, I just say something like 200, near 200 styles in there, and most of them are real world ones. But then I've got the stuff like the drive fu and the gun fu, so you can do the, the Hong Kong sake movie stuff. But there's also a bunch of them that are, if you want to do some fantasy stuff. So like there's the demon hunting and the elven archery, and the stuff that's geared towards people who have superpowers. So there's the elasticata, which is just martial arts for somebody who's got stretching powers, and flycom, which is a martial art for flyers. So I really wanted to kind of make that thing, because one of the things that always bugs me about comics is, do you know what, Batman? Why don't you sit Superman down and teach him some martial arts? Like, you want to make Superman a badass, teach him kung fu, teach him something. So that's one of those things that has always bugged me since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote this book, I made sure there was a section in there that covered that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a comics geek inside of me who wants to say, but in the Silver Age, they specifically referenced a Kryptonian martial art, and then I stopped that guy before he can say that, because I know what that sounds like. So.
Plus, then you realize he never actually uses it. He just slugs away at everything in front of him, right?
Yeah, no, he would go to Kandor when he got lonely and hang out with the Kryptonians. They would talk about it. But yeah, it's, when you can pull the planet out of its orbit, do you need to punch a guy?
Yeah, just once you want to see Superman go up against Darkseid and do like a roundhouse kick, or, an elbow to the jugular or something like that.
It'd make it a more interesting fight, that's for sure.
Yeah. Darkseid be like, what the hell was that?
So let's show your covers one last time. Walt, any closing thoughts from you before we jump into talking about?
Even though it's much derided, the Man of Steel movie has that they have that kind of feel that Steve was going for in the fight in Smallville.
Yeah.
You see some of the Kryptonians like throw down, and they start realizing that these powers open up different avenues of approach with their combat abilities. So they start using them. Things like, flying away right from the ground rather than having to get up and up and away, or they get slammed, and right as they get slammed, they remaneuver using the powers, and then then of course obviously the heat vision starts coming into play. So I mean it was really, if nothing else, that one scene is just one of my favorite scenes, just because of as far as like superhumans using martial arts, just because of the sheer context of how they were performing it, but also X-Men Days of Future Past on film, integrating Blink's powers with Wolverine's fighting ability and all this other stuff. It was really, really amazing to watch.
Well, and the thing about your point with Man of Steel, which, by the way, I'll go on the record and say, and I really enjoyed anyways, no matter what anybody else says, is that you got to remember is that these Kryptonians didn't have these powers. They were, the Zod and his cadre were the warriors of Krypton. They were the warrior caste. So they were trained to fight without superpowers. And then all of a sudden, oh, we're on Earth, we've got superpowers. So, there was this, how did they earn this reputation as these great warriors before all of a sudden they could, lift up a house and throw it around, so there is that element to it where if you're someone who gets in a fight a lot, no matter how strong you are, it always made me think, why would you not learn how to use that more effectively? Why would you not learn how to fight properly instead of just saying, well, I just hope the other guy just falls down before I do? So, and that's why metahuman martial arts was written.
Oh, cool. Let's talk about what you got coming out in the near future. We talked about Trick or Treat Gang. That's available now on Drive-Thru RPG. And Better Mousetraps. That is available for third ed, and that they can get that right now, right?
Yep. Okay. Oh, those have been out since like 2014, 2015. They're consistently good sellers for us because A lot of people, like I said, Better Mousetrap, not as much as Metahuman Martial Arts, but it's another one of those ones where people are like, they either really like it because of what it offers, or they're like, I don't want to add new stuff, and they just don't like it for that factor. But this one is a lot more agnostic, because it's not really adding a new concept. It's just, the new stuff is new advantages, new power builds, new extras and stuff like that.
Hey, speaking of rule sets, as a third-party publisher, you have any thoughts about, every once in a while I hear the scantiest rumor of a 4th ed, but
I haven't heard anything, but then again, I used to be a lot more plugged in at Green Ronin when John was there. Because he and I would talk a lot on social media, but also email and stuff, and I would send him a copy of everything I published, so we would talk about it when it came out. And also, he's the one who brought me in for 3rd edition when it was just the DC Adventures.
Yeah,
because I wrote for that as well and play tested the original rules. So I kind of had that element for it, but of course it's many years on from that, so that I don't really have that into the company anymore.
Okay. It seems like it's time, but I just, like I said, I haven't got any official, confirmation or verification. So maybe someday, I guess we'll see.
I'm fairly confident that rather than doing a Mutants and Masterminds 4th edition, they would instead adapt superheroes to the age system. They seem pretty intent on boosting and continuing the age system.
Well, it's also where would a 4th edition go? Because they've kind of the 3rd edition kind of broke everything down as far as it could possibly go, because you don't have like the blast power anymore, which is just damage that's ranged. They've made it damaged where you can add it ranged, and the descriptor and the power name really does a lot of the heavy lifting now. So it's kind of like short of a radical shift to the rules where there's no longer advantages, or they cut down on the amount of skills or something like that. I don't really see much direction they can really take this in to make it radically different without just making it an entirely different system. Like they've from second to 3rd edition, they even got rid of the standard D20 attributes and just used the values, right? So they've kept cutting out all this fat. So what's left to do with a 4th edition, really?
Oh, yeah, that's a solid point about rules development. I was thinking about it more from publishing schedules and marketing, but yeah, I can see what you're saying.
So Jacob's point is a very good one. If they wanted to do a 4th edition Mutants and Masterminds, I could really see them just saying, let's just take it an entirely different rules set and go from there.
They probably wouldn't call it Mutants and Masterminds then, I don't think, but yeah, fair enough. So how is life in Canada these days?
Not as anxious as it is for you guys down in the States, but even as a Canadian, the Canadians are keeping their eye on what's going on, because the rest of the world is invested on that. So it was an anxious night last night. We've had a little bit of snow, which has since disappeared. So just waiting for that to come. And you don't realize how bad things are until you try and schedule to get your winter tires put on during COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Because all the garages have shrunken their schedules and everything. There's no drop bys, right? You can't just show up and say, I'm just going to leave my car here, because where are you going to go while it's getting done? Right? I'm not going to go over to the coffee shop or whatever and have a drink while it's getting done, because nobody's allowed inside. You don't want to be stuck outside for 4 hours in a Canadian winter.
Yeah.
Does it get cold up there?
It's different. Is it Canadian cold or American cold? Which version do you want?
I live in Colorado, so I get more cold than I think Jacob does in Oklahoma. But yeah.
So let's just say I'm still wearing my spring/fall jacket, and I haven't started zipping it up yet. But we've had snow on the ground, so it's cold, but it's not Canadian cold. Would be I think the most appropriate response.
Fair enough. Hey, how do Canadians feel about Letterkenny? Is it popular up there, or?
Well, of course it's Canadian.
Okay. Well, I'm from Indiana, and many of us hate John Cougar Mellencamp with a passion. So I just thought
no, we love it because we recognize what's true in it, but we also recognize the parody in it, right? So especially when you see the stuff like where they can make a trip over to Quebec, or the stuff with the snowmobile trails. If you've lived outside of like I'm in Toronto now, but I grew up outside of Toronto. At some time I spent living up in Aurelia, which is the boonies, where you could actually drive snowmobiles to school. You see all of the fun and the reality in it, but you realize that they've taken it just a couple of steps farther than reality to make it funny. Including if you've ever lived near a reservation, which Aurelia does. It's known for its casino. They built a casino just as I was moving out of that area, so there's a reservation right nearby. So all of these things I see that are familiar, so I can find it hilarious.
All right, cool. Well, hey, Steve, appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Let's not wait 3 years before we have you on again.
Yeah, anytime. I was lucky enough that I had a hole in my schedule, because otherwise I've got calls on the day job all day today, pretty much. So it was lucky that I could get this slotted in for today.
All right, cool. Appreciate your time, Walt and Jacob. Appreciate you joining me at last minute. And to all our listeners and viewers out there, we will catch you next time on the BAF Podcast.
Great, thanks.